All right, let's jump right into today's explainer, where we are going to completely reframe the everyday act of keeping a diary. We're going to look at it as a profound tool of human evolution. Honestly, if you think your journal is just a simple log of what you ate for breakfast, prepare to have your mind changed.
To map out this roughly 10-minute explainer, we're going to follow a roadmap through 5 fascinating areas. We'll cover the true meaning of diaries, external memory, extending the brain, the construction of an ethical self, resistance to power and memory, and finally, reweaving the world and self.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the true meaning of diaries, going well beyond the nostalgic log. So why do we actually keep diaries? I mean, we usually picture them as these lock-and-key teenage confession boxes, or maybe just quaint little nostalgic logs. But as we'll see, they're actually a highly active technology that restructures our minds and our societies. When you look through the lens of the anthropology of writing, a diary isn't just some passive storage drive. It's a dynamic cultural practice that has a very real, physical, and symbolic impact on how we interact with the world around us.
Which brings us to Section 2, External Memory Extending the Brain, where we'll look at the biological leap of writing.
What's absolutely fascinating here is how cognitive scientist Merlin Donald maps out our evolution. Notice how writing in a diary plugs us directly into the 4th stage of cognitive evolution, theoretic culture. We started out just reacting to immediate episodes, right? Then we evolved to mimicking with gestures, and then up to spoken language and myths. But it literally wasn't until we began recording data externally that we built the foundation for logical and scientific thought.
The crucial takeaway is that a diary functions as external symbolic storage. It uses exograms on paper, physical media that bypasses the strict limits of our biological brain memory, or engrams. You know how human memory gets distorted every single time we try to recall something? Well, a diary practically gives us infinite, unchanging storage space.
And by offloading our memories onto paper, we essentially create a hybrid mind. We are fusing our biological brains with these cultural external networks. It frees up your mental RAM to actually use abstract, critical thinking, allowing you to objectively analyze your own past. When you aren't burning energy just trying to remember things, you can categorize concepts and spot contradictions in your life. It's a massive defense mechanism for maintaining cognitive autonomy, which is huge today when algorithms are constantly trying to interpret our lives for us.
Moving right along to Section 3, Construction of an Ethical Self. This is where writing becomes a philosophical gym for the soul.
To really get this, we have to look at Michel Foucault's theory on the 2 totally different ways we view journaling. In modern society, we often treat it like the Christian confession on the left, like a judge passively seeking out hidden guilt or trauma. But if you look back historically, ancient Greeks and Romans used notebooks called hypomnemona, much more like the administrator on the right. It was an active, strategic process. You logged your actions and readings specifically to adjust your errors and align your life with reason.
In fact, Foucault categorized keeping a diary under technologies of the self. Out of his 4 technologies of human development, this one is all about an active practice of self-care. It's ethical training to attain wisdom. So it's not just venting on a page. It's a deliberate, tactical operation on your own thoughts to forge a stronger version of yourself.
And the crazy thing is, we see this ancient practice living on today through modern Stoicism apps. Things like Stoa or Stoic meditations are basically reviving the hypomnemata. Sure, they're marketed for modern stress relief, but at their core, they're tapping into that exact same ancient drive, curating an ethical, resilient self through daily written reflection.
Okay, let's zoom out to the societal level for Section 4, Resistance to Power and Memory, the diary as a tool for cultural survival.
Looking at Jan and Aleida Assmann's theory here, there's a really stark difference between 2 types of memory. You've got everyday communicative memory, which is shared by ordinary people but totally fades in about 80 years. And then you have institutional cultural memory, managed by experts, which can last for millennia. All those daily interactions and oral stories you share, they naturally disappear once the people who lived them pass away.
This is where diaries become absolutely vital. They bridge what's known as the floating gap. They capture those fleeting, communicative memories, like the quiet nuances of everyday life, or the unrecorded trauma of living through a war, and anchor them into enduring cultural history. When a later generation discovers a private diary, it literally transforms a fading personal experience into permanent institutional memory.
Going a step further, political scientist James C. Scott highlights an epic clash between the state and the local. On the left, the state wants techne, rigid, standardized data that's legible. They want centralized weights, measures, and names so they can easily govern and tax. But on the right, everyday people rely on metis, which is bottom-up, flexible, context-rich knowledge that helps them actually survive day to day.
To protect that complex daily reality, farmers in Mali actually collect scraps of paper to build domestic archives. It's incredible. By keeping their own logistical notes, they maintain their local knowledge, their metis. It's a micro-political act of tactical resistance against the government's attempts to homogenize them. Just by writing things down, they are carving out a completely autonomous private sphere.
Finally, let's look at Section 5, Reweaving the World in Self. We'll explore the researcher's refuge.
In the field of anthropology, researchers face a huge psychological burden. They have to convert the chaotic, messy reality of the field from their internal, subjective head notes into formal, objective field notes. Think about it. The act of writing stops the fluid flow of real life and forces you to freeze it into fixed text. That requires an immense amount of mental processing and coping.
And there's no better example of this than Bronislaw Malinowski. For decades, the public thought anthropologists were perfectly detached, objective observers. But the shocking, posthumous publication of Malinowski's private diary shattered that myth. It revealed raw emotional turmoil and intense alienation. It proved that a personal notebook is an absolutely crucial release valve. It's the safe space where we process the crisis of encountering the unknown so that we can actually function in reality.
So, as we wrap up our explainer today, I hope you can see that journaling is so much more than just preserving memories. It overcomes our biological limits through exograms, it constructs an ethical self, it anchors fleeting moments into history, it resists state control, and it gives us a space to process crisis. It is a profound bridge between the limits of our biology and the immense pressures of the world around us.
Which leaves us with this final question to ponder. In an age where AI is constantly trying to automate our memories, and algorithms dictate our narratives before we even fully process them, isn't putting a pen to paper the most powerful act of cognitive rebellion you can undertake? Maintaining your own private interface with the world might just be the absolute best way to stay fully human. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today.